Welcome back to the Get It Out podcast. I'm your host, Jake Cepeda. Want to say thank you for checking out last week's episode. It was really successful. Lots of feedback, lots of critiques, a lot of ways to improve the show. So thank you so much for checking it out. Also, though, I didn't address a couple things that I wanted to, just forgot being the first episode. But a lot of people ask me, like, what is Get It Out? What is the podcast about? What's going on here? And ideally, Get It Out is exactly what it sounds like, getting out different topics, ideas, getting out different perspectives. Myself, as a filmmaker, am interested in sharing stories, getting to connect with people through different platforms. And I figured a podcast is a great way to, meet new people for the first time, also share some ideas that you normally wouldn't get from everyday interactions. So podcast seems like pretty good choice to go with. So that's what Get It Out is. Also, you can expect every episode on YouTube and Apple Podcast and Spotify every Thursday at 9 a.m. That's where we'll be going live on all those platforms. So feel free to check them out there when they launch every Thursday. So with that being said, we're going to go into the topic for today, which is centered around personal development. We're going to be talking about personal development with my co-host that I have today, as well as myself. We're going to go into then women empowerment, what that means in personal development, and then transitioning to our last topic, which is going to be higher education for women, higher education in general, kind of our thoughts on all those three topics. So if you're interested in listening to those, keep listening. Without further ado, I'll stop talking. We'll get into my co-host, and I'll have her introduce her name. So to my left, we have...
Hi guys, my name is Nicolette. I am super excited to be here and just talk about some really cool things with Jacob. I'm
thank you for being part of the podcast. I definitely, it's cool getting to meet you.
Yeah.
I've met you, I've seen you around a couple of times, but I haven't sat down, talked.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to have you on, talk about this personal development. I know when you reached out to me, you wanted to talk about specifically this, and I was interested to, break down kind of why and get to learn about you a little bit, since this is the first time I'm actually meeting her, sitting down, having discussion. So it'll be interesting to get into it. So without further ado, let's get into the first topic, which is personal development. So when you reached out to me, what was kind of your thought process with coming up with this topic for today's episode?
I think in the last 4 to 5 months or so, I've made some just major transitions in my life, and I think along with a lot of people just in today's day and age. But I think for a long time there were a lot of things that I wanted to work on for myself, and I think this was the first time that I actually was able to dive into those things and really reflect on where I am in my life, where I wanted to be, just really taking a look in the mirror and seeing what my what I thought were my personal flaws and what I needed to work on. And so when I really got invested in that, when I really started to see what it looked like to see those things progress, I just got really excited because I could definitely feel the difference in just my day-to-day. So I kind of got really invested in that. And so I mean, kind of vocal on my social media, and I've had really great response from that. And so I love that people are getting invested in that as well. So really passionate about it.
So for people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about your past, kind of where you started from, and then how that transitioned to your mindset right now.
Yeah, so I am from the east side of Aurora. Right, yeah, always. I grew up in a Hispanic household, the oldest daughter of six. There's 6 of us. Grew up with a single mom, kind of just trying to figure out where my place in life was going to be. I didn't even know college was going to be an option for me until my higher maybe junior year of high school. And so I just always knew that I wanted more for myself, and so it was kind of up to me to go out and get it. And so I've always had this drive in me that wanted more, and I knew that for myself, and it always took off from there, just that thought.
And has there been anything in your past, hardship-wise, that you would like to share about, kind of, this happened to me, this kind of inspired me to do better, this is why I decided to do better? Is there anything that happened?
I think if you're from Aurora, the east side specifically, you kind of know what the demographic and the dynamic is over here. I mean, for me personally, being old enough to see my parents separate and kind of take I mean, I was the oldest of my siblings and kind of take on that role and really understand what they were going through. I kind of always felt like it was my responsibility to step up. And that's just a lot for anyone going through at such a young age to really like deal with and kind of own. So, I mean, I kind of just had a lot of different like experiences that kind of built me. I know they talk a lot about like I'm not mature. I just been traumatized all my life, you know. But I mean, it's true. It does make you kind of grow a little bit faster, and you kind of become more responsible a lot earlier in your life. And I just knew that I had like people that I wanted to take care of, and I wanted to always take care of myself, obviously. So,
yeah, I could definitely like relate because for myself too, I grew up from like Aurora my whole life, and I'm actually the youngest out of my siblings. I have five siblings, so I'm kind of like the opposite of you, where I'm like the youngest. But I was very independent myself growing up as a child. When I really didn't have to be, I had pretty much everything handed to me, to be honest. But with that being said, though, being from the East Side, people just kind of assume like either how I am, like in my everyday life right now, that like, oh, I must have had it like really easy. I must have been like, like have everything handed to me. But that's not the case. It came from a pretty rough background as well, where like my dad was pretty prominent gang member. He was part of that big gang wave that happened in like the 90s here. Multiple occasions where, he would have like people, sell drugs in the house, coming with weapons, and like that was my whole background was having people come in and out of my house selling drugs and being around the whole lifestyle. And it's a little shocking for some people that I tell, like, because they just kind of expect like how I am, it's like that, to be like, oh, like you actually came from like the streets, like you came from that environment. And that's kind of been in my background. But even talking to like a lot of people from Aurora, it's kind of the similar background. People, have to do what they got to do. They got to sell drugs. They're part of gangs. And a lot of people, like parents, haven't graduated high school. So definitely being from Aurora and being primarily Hispanic as well, people have similar stories here, and it's sad that that's the case. But the positive with that is that you are seeing a lot of people like yourself, like myself, taking the bad and making something good out of it. So I'm actually wondering, with yourself, what is your biggest, let's start there. Let's start with, what is your biggest hope for Aurora in general? What are you kind of seeing like come up? What are you seeing like the positives going on with the city that, has helped you, with your own personal growth as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think even when I was in high school and once I really found out that college was even an option for me, it was just really refreshing to kind of now be in this space where I was surrounded by people with like minds and like really were determined to make something of themselves or give back to the community. I mean, I know, my family over at Primo, like I think that's awesome to have something like that in Aurora. And I think there's a lot of other people from my generation that I went to high school with that are also just really determined and independent and really working towards a better future for not only themselves, but for the community as well. So, I mean, it's really nice to see. I definitely think that Aurora is in a lot better place than it was when I was younger and growing up. I think I was exposed to some really crazy things that my brothers will never see in their lives. So it's nice that we're kind of making this transition, and I think Aurora itself is really just growing. I mean, there's definitely a lot of progress to be done, but I think the potential is amazing. And I think people really start to see that. Aurora is the second largest city in Illinois. Exactly. I don't know if people really know that. But yeah, just the upcoming communities and just the people in the community are really passionate, and that's one thing that I really respect and love about Aurora.
Definitely. So like that's actually how I actually knew of you, was from like Premill. So for those that don't know, kind of what is Premill? What is, how did that start for you? How do you interact with them? What's the first?
Yeah, so it goes way back. So I for those of you who don't know, Gio and Danny, who are the founders of Primo, I went to high school with them, and we kind of just grew up together in high school, like going to parties. Like we laugh all the time. Like we were always like, are you guys coming to the party? Like you're gonna be so lit. They call themselves STU. Shout out to STU. But no, and that's kind of how that friendship started. But then I had went away to college, and obviously would come back home and visit. And so Gio's like, you got to come check this out. Like, we're having a photo shoot for Primo, which I had already knew that they were kind of working on. And so, yeah, like ever since then, and I saw how passionate he was about it. And just for what the brand stood for, I think a lot of people think of it as just like a storefront for like retail, resale, vintage, and that kind of stuff. But like if you really get into it, they stand for a lot more than that. There's like a sports aspect of it where they really try to do like sporting events with the community. Just like they had like a back to school drive and just really building those relationships and for our youth. And so just seeing that passion and like what the vision was, I was really excited to just be able to support that. So that's kind of how that started.
I could tell how you're speaking of it. That definitely has impacted yourself,
Yeah.
and kind of your growth as a person. Do you think that joining that group was definitely a plus for you? And what have you learned as far as being around those like-minded people? I feel like for myself, I fall into the trap where I kind of let other people that don't have the same motive as me kind of be around my circle. And it's great to have friends from different aspects, but I feel like in able to grow in your own career and your own self, you have to be around like-minded people. So kind of
So I think it had a lot to do with, not saying that Primo didn't. I think the way my life kind of panned out, they became really a lot more present at the right times. So, I mean, I went away for college, and I gained a bunch of awesome friends from that. And I was in a sorority, so I had that kind of helped build me. I think Primo was more so like really getting me invested in the city of Aurora and like that aspect of it. But as of now, like when I had to make some just personal transitions in my life and they started to become more of like my everyday people that I surrounded myself with, it was definitely refreshing for me. I've worked for Nike for 8 years, and so that too also I think instilled a really powerful like drive in me. And so when the two kind of combined, I think that's kind of my happy place, because just to be in that atmosphere with the people who are trying to also grow and develop is definitely refreshing, because we can do that and we can have those conversations, but we can also have fun and do what friends do. So it was definitely nice to have that consistency in Aurora.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Aurora, like you said, when we started, it's becoming a hot spot for sure. I think that, like you said, people don't know about Aurora that much, but like it's the second biggest city. I know the city is trying to invest in the arts more and kind of build more businesses up, the downtown area, build it back up. Because, it could be like a Naperville as far as like arts and creatives and just getting stuff, positive change out there. Just a matter of like the right people involved, and then just people getting to know downtown Aurora, stuff like that. So as far as personal like, development for yourself, if you can share, like what are some things that you've been doing currently right now that's kind of part of your personal like do you do any type of like meditations, or do you do what kind of like your routine that's helping you right now?
Yeah, I think it's really the daily habits that will change the outcome that you see in your life. And and it sounds so simple, but that's really the hardest thing to master. When you get so used to a routine, it's like, it's so easy to stay with something that's familiar to you. And so it really comes down to the things that you do on a daily. And I mean, I'm definitely not as 100% consistent as I want to be, but it's definitely a lot better than it was before. So I really started getting into like personal development during quarantine, and I got a meditation bowl for Christmas, and that kind of just took it off for me. I had wanted one for a long time, so when I got it, I really started looking into like chakra healing, meditation. I was listening to meditation podcasts all the time on Spotify. And then once it started to get nicer outside, I spent a lot of time outdoors by myself, just reflecting and trying to understand like my trauma and what I needed to heal within myself. But as far as like a day-to-day routine, I try to stay off my phone as much as possible, which I think a lot of people can relate to because it's just really hard to stay off of it. But I think it's just taking time to reflect and taking time for yourself and spending time by myself. I think that's a huge part of really healing and developing, is that you have to know who you are, and you have to get to know who you are and really take a look in the mirror and see what you want to fix. So, I mean, I try to wake up early in the morning and do what I can. definitely had more consistent times in my life than now, but I know that that's still an intention for me, and so still trying to do those things on a daily basis.
Yeah, definitely in quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have been just like on
Yeah.
this big kick of like, now that I can't do anything, I'm
Yeah.
gonna start working on myself now.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've had to slow down so much. We had to slow down and
Yeah.
not be as active as we used to be. We were stuck in our houses all day. So what else is to do but to reflect on yourself? I know for myself, during quarantine, I was, figuring out what I wanted to do with my life, because I was like, okay, I've been doing photography for a while. I wanted to get more involved in like businesses and starting like my own brand or whatever. But really, I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? Like, I should probably take a pause from like my career, and maybe I should focus more on like myself, because I feel like that's a big problem that I face, but also talking to a lot of people like they face too. What do you think is the biggest halt on someone's self progress? Do you think it's people around them? Do you think it's like themselves? What would be your guess for why people stop or don't want to improve themselves?
I don't think people don't want to improve themselves. I feel like I mean, for the most part, just people in my life, I feel like that's something that they want to do. But I think what holds people back from that journey is really the familiarity that they have in their daily lives, and like really breaking that cycle. Because you really, I mean, you have to fight for it.
Yep.
You have to want to break that cycle. And for me, it was kind of half and half. Like, it was kind of forced on me, but I also like had to deal with that and understand that. But I also believe that when you work on yourself, everything around you really starts to flourish. Like, and that's feedback I got from just people in my life before, was that, well, you try to be there for all these other people. Like, you can't show up as your best self when you're giving 80% to everyone around you and you're only keeping 20 for you. And so like, I really took that feedback and invested in me. And I mean, I feel like I feel the difference in my life and in the relationships that I have with people. Like, I'm able to nourish those relationships better because I handle situations better. I handle conflict in a better way. I'm able to communicate my wants or like my feedback from other people in a way that can be progressive. Maybe before it wasn't necessarily that scenario. Like, I was definitely a hothead and thought I was never wrong, which obviously I know that that's not true. But yeah, I think you just have to really know that it's a journey, and it's a long one.
Yep.
So you have to know that that's what you want, and you have to be intentional about that every day.
Yeah, I'm definitely learning myself like that. I have to surround myself with a lot more people like you, like that have that kind of that ambition. Cause I fall into I don't know if you can ever like, or you have like related, but I fall in the trap of like connecting with people that really, they make me happy whenever I hang out with them, but they don't add any value to my life. They just kind of like either want to drink and smoke all day, or they want to, just not chase anything. And I think that stems from like, them not feeling like they have opportunities to grow, to do bigger things. But sometimes people just want to like be lazy and not do shit because it's easy for them to do that. But definitely, I should probably take some advice from you, because I need some self-growth right now, because I'm currently just kind of bumming right now, kind of doing my job and trying to do stuff like podcasting and different photography stuff. But I think one thing that I've lacked is self-growth, learning what that looks like for me, especially being like in like relationships. I don't know if you want to talk about like relationships, but like I've been in shitty relationships with people where they just drain my energy, and then they stop my self-growth because I'm focusing on their self-growth and making them grow before I do. And I don't know if you had that same experience, but I feel like self-growth cannot happen with somebody that obviously is not adding value to your life. I don't know if you ever had like experiences as far it doesn't have to be like even like romantic, but even with friends, like loving people like that. What with your current growth right now, has the idea of love changed at all?
I mean, it definitely changed. I think I don't even know how long ago it was, but I was in a relationship for a long time before I really started getting in on this journey. And I think it was really like my tightest, like close-knit group of friends that like, I mean, are not in my lives anymore. And I do feel like that event really led me to where I am now. And so like when I look back on like when that first happened and I lost all these people who I thought were going to be in my life forever, you kind of really think about, I'm never going to get through this. Like I'm never going to see past this. And now I'm in a space where I'm like, okay, well maybe that wasn't the way I wanted that to happen, but I know 100% that that was supposed to happen for me to be in the space that I'm in now. Yeah. But in that time, I do feel like I had that fire that I did want to grow, and I wanted more for myself, and I wanted to do all these things. And it felt like I was fighting for that for other people, and I feel like maybe I didn't express it the right way to them. But sometimes it just felt like I was just trying to pull something out of someone that wasn't necessarily there. And I think that can kind of tarnish some relationships and kind of cause like an imbalance of like what you guys expect from each other. But yeah.
Yeah, I know for me, like, one of the biggest hardships that I deal with is like learning when to let go of something. That's like my biggest flaw as a person. It doesn't matter if it's like like, you know, with partners or just friends. I'm terrible at like letting go or knowing when to. But
so am I.
like the big quote that kind of like helped me to get over that a little bit is just saying of like, there's people that enter your life for a reason, and they come to teach you something, and if they're still in the progress of teaching you something, they stay, but if there's no longer teaching you anything, they leave. So like that's kind of in my head, I'm just like, okay, this person was in my life for this reason. Once I got that lesson learned, then they left, and that's okay. Yeah. And I think that's been helping me, like, you know, get that idea of like, okay, letting go.
It's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. Because.
Well, it's a hard pill to swallow.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially me, I'm like super like empathetic. Like I will like ride or die for someone like until like the last minute. So, and it's even hard to even for me to like, I don't know why. I don't know if you can like have the same feeling, but you know, if someone like does me wrong, I like will still be like ride or die for them, and that's like super bad habit of mine too. Is like no matter what someone does to me, I will always be there for them. And with that mentality that I have, it's good and bad, but I definitely see it being more better now in my life because it has been stopping my self growth. Because you know, someone can damage me so much, but you know, I'm letting them do that, one, and then two, I'm not letting them go, so they just continue to do that, and it stops my self growth, I think.
Yeah, I definitely get what you mean.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're good.
Yeah, I think for me, I get that totally, but also I was kind of like opposite. I think more speaking so as a woman, and I think this is why I say like I've grown so much as a woman as well, is like people would do me dirty, especially like when I was in college and like just naive, this young version of who I was. Like people would do me dirty, and I'd like tweet back at them, like subtweet people back, and like low blows and all those things, and I'm just like, that did nothing for me but take me to a place lower than I am supposed to live. And so like now when I'm like hit with like hate or like ignorance or just anything lower than who I am, like I'm no longer like bringing myself down. Like I'm gonna show love always, no matter what, but you also still do have to find that balance and like set boundaries for yourself too. Otherwise it's just not gonna be, it won't be pretty.
No, I get. Well, let's get into like our next topic then, which is then women empowerment. I kind of let you take the floor with a lot of these things, but you know, being myself, I'm a man. I'm not a woman, obviously. It's always interesting because I've actually, my whole household is all women, except like for like my brother. But even like my aunts, primarily just all women. So I've been around women my whole life. But you know, obviously, I don't go through the same struggles, good and bad. So I just kind of wanted to, you know, break down a couple of things you have to deal with in your life that, you know, has added to your personal growth. Is there any stories, any type of situations that are specifically tailored, you know, as a woman and your experience going through it?
I had just been really fortunate to have some really strong women in my life growing up, even growing up on the east side of Aurora. Like I have friends who, like when I went to NIU, shout out to Sharana and Drew, but we went to East together, and they were my roommates when I was in college. And for me, that was just a sight to see. And even Sharonda, like, when we were in high school, she was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. Like, I'm going to be a lawyer. And she graduated high school a year early. And she's a lawyer now.
Period.
And so, period. And so, like, I'm just fortunate enough to have women like that in my life who have kind of, like, set that example and had those intentions and really, like, sought after them. And me joining a sorority when I was in college definitely put a lot of that into perspective for me as well. And even being in like the business industry, like seeing what that struggle is as a woman and just things that we have to fight for, and really find our voice and like be vocal about what we want. Because I mean, as women, it's very easy to be considered a bitch or like bitchy when you're a boss ass woman, you know, like, and so how do you draw that line and still get what you want?
And there's
do
definitely
it
this
the right
like
way.
stereotype of like, you know, let's say for example, if I was in a position of power, you know, I'm setting the rules, I'm doing do this, do that. To me, it's like, well, people would perceive that as like, hey, that's a boss, like that's a guy that gets stuff done, you know, he's in control. But you know, I've been just working like normal jobs. You know, if I have like a female coworker that's higher position than me, automatically like people around me that are like lower, they're just like, oh, she's fucking bitch, like I fucking hate this bitch, and stuff like that. And I'm just like, you know, it's just weird how that's how society views. There definitely is a power complex between men and women, and it's just, I think as we're growing as a like society, that's those glass ceilings are starting to shatter a bit. But there's still a long way to go. I mean, I live with very powerful women as well. And that I definitely proceed over me in different aspects of life. But still, like people, I when I'm going to different stores and like let's say like my mom makes a comment about someone cutting her in like line or whatever, and she said, hey, like I was in line first, can you wait behind me? They automatically, oh, I'm just fucking bitch, or I'm just like, that's just common sense. Like I don't know, stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely like empathize a lot
And
with the struggle.
and I honestly, like, I'm really blessed enough to have some really awesome like leadership experiences and just the opportunities that I've had. Like I've had like great internships. I've been in rooms with very powerful women in different organizations, and I'm so grateful that I was able to experience that, especially coming from the east side of Aurora. And like I really didn't understand what that power meant really because I wasn't exposed to that at a younger age. So then when I started to be exposed to like these different roles and like what women can do, it really meant a lot for me, because I mean, just especially as a minority woman, like the opportunities seem very slim. And so once I realized like there's really no ceiling on what I want to do, I kind of took off with that and really invested in my growth and development in all aspects. And being exposed to that, like a lot of the leaders that I've seen in just paths that I've taken in my life, they're women. They're like women. I do believe they're great leaders. Like not saying that men aren't. But I definitely feel like just the things that we have to deal with and overcome to be in this, to even get in those positions, and then to be successful at what we do. I think it's really hard, but it's also very rewarding to be in those positions as well, and really like set the tone for people who want to be in those roles, women who want to be in those roles as well.
Oh, definitely. So question for you then. So, what are the most empowering things about being a woman? You kind of mentioned a little bit of, but is there any like specific like this, what's?
I think the strength of a woman is the most powerful thing to me, and I'm so inspired by the strength that I see in myself and just other women in general. And it wasn't always like that, and that's why I feel like the personal development has a lot to do with that, because as a woman, I can't sit here and say that I've never been like the insecure, the jealous, the mean, the hater, like, you know, and I had to go through those phases, because I mean, I guess I didn't have to, but I mean, I did go through those phases, and it never had to do with those women. It really had to do with myself and how I felt about me. And so once I was